Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Race Cold War study by Kyrie and Ahero. The power of words, images, and symbols on the Black psyche. We're covering pages 51 through 60. And we're just going to read the first word because I believe Kwaku brought it up last week, at risk. And I was quite certain that it was in the text. And here it is. And the term reads from page 51, at risk. This is a term associated with the social condition and problems of Black people. It conveys the more than subtle message that survivability rate of Black people is in question. The concept of at risk also suggests that Black people are a dangerous and self-destructive population without social or political direction, a mindless group of childlike beings bent on destruction and mayhem. They are dangerous to be around and a threat to the existence of other people. When this term is used, it is a clear indication of a population or a community's survival being threatened. I think the last sentence is quite significant because I've seen this term at risk been used to describe people, especially during this current situation. Everyone is always talking about, but I never took it as a way to understand that people classified as Black were under attack. But this is what this last sentence is suggesting when it says that when this term is being used, it is a clear indication of a population or a community's survival being threatened. So now it's very much easier for me to understand the double speak that I hear newscasters say when they're reporting on at-risk people suffering from so-called financial disadvantages or medical disadvantages. It's just a way of saying, yeah, that these at-risk people, yeah, these are the people who are going to be suffering the most, dying the most from whatever so-called crisis is being allowed to take place, or it is taking place naturally, no matter the result. The people who are going to suffer the most, which will be the people who are at risk, which are always non-white people, especially people classified as Black. And I'm going to line and see if folks want to chime in.
Yeah, hello, this is Kwaku. I wanted to add also that with this term at risk, it means, basically if you are around Black people, you too are at risk. So a lot of times when over the pandemic, when they were talking about how Black people are at high risk for contracting COVID, that can almost be decoded as if you hang around Black people, you will get COVID. If you are in close proximity with Black people, your situation, your survival is at threat. So I thought that this was very interesting. I know I mentioned it at like the previous meeting, but for him to kind of go into it and kind of clarify it, I found that to be very interesting and very factual and truthful as well.
Well said, Mr. Kwaku. Any other comments?
Black people are at risk for many things. So it's just kind of key. It kind of reinforces the idea that if you are around Black people, you're closely associated with Black people, terrible things are probably going to happen to you.
Yeah, that has been the association, and that has been the training, conditioning, programming. Like people who are associated with Black people who attempt to help Black people have definitely, the record shows, have been destroyed, mistreated, and terrorized. So, yeah, very much so. The reality of we've been trained to be dangerous via the cultures that we partake in, and we have been like there's a given a aura of being dangerous due to racism and white supremacy. So getting it from all angles is definitely a way to keep Black people at the bottom and so-called at risk. Very, very diabolical once we know what is happening um, on planet Earth.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with 0526 and Kwaku mentioned at risk. I used to hear that word even when I was in middle school. That's how they classified, me. Personally, I'm pretty sure that they use that term. But this whole chapter taught me the importance of how the people who classify themselves as white and who practice racism, white supremacy, they understand labeling, they understand words and the power of words and the power of continuously feeding the world the anti-Black propaganda. And like at risk has so many negative connotations, and it all supports, sustains, maintains, and refines white supremacy, because now you have people, the system is so insane, you have people writing grants to help at risk, quote unquote, non-white people and people classified as Black. But yeah, it's a lot in this chapter. But I'm glad that we started with the at-risk part.
Mm. Thank you, Mr. Sir. Very well said. Any more comments? Doesn't have to be about the at-risk, just about the text in general. What you
Yeah, I have a comment. Also reading the at-risk section, I thought about what Sir has mentioned and others about when you are applying for certain grants, it's like, or even talking about your experience, they almost want you to say, like, have you worked with at-risk communities before? And obviously no one's going to say non-white communities, but that's almost where my mind goes when people ask me that, like, oh, low income, that's the other word. But thinking of at risk to what, I've never questioned, like, what does that even mean? But I always know, like, when someone says at risk, they're referring to, in my case, like Black communities, since I relate to that. So it's very interesting.
I was gonna say the same thing, Ray, too. Like generally the term at risk, like I understand, like, it's for the Black community or non-white communities, but it's like, just the way that he unpacked that, or I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in on the group, but the author unpacked that. I didn't even think about it to that level, and how destructive it is using these terms.
Yeah, I wanted to add too, this term at risk, it also seems like it kind of turns into almost like victim blaming, where for Black people, when they hear these terms like, oh, we're at risk for diabetes, all these chronic diseases, it's almost like, but Black people can start pointing the finger at each other, like, oh, you need to take responsibility for this, this and this. And I agree to some extent that Black people need to take responsibility, but I think overall the idea and the goal is to distract Black people from actually realizing that racism, white supremacy created the conditions. It created and put you in the category of at risk. That was just what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I think I think I'm hearing a lot of logic being announced. I just wish the Kyrie Naharo, the author, I just wish he would have just used a little more logic when using this word community, because if Black people had the so-called community, then it wouldn't be at risk. Community is a group of people who have the ability to protect themselves and to not be so-called at risk, to not be threatened, to not be subjugated. So yeah, it would have been like crystal cut clear if he had just not used this word communities, because according to logic, Black people don't have communities because we don't have the means to protect ourselves. We are dependent on the very system that subjugates us. But still very, very constructive decoding of this word, this race code word, at risk. Any more comments from the text?
I wanted to talk about the next one, which was birth control. So for me, this, as the author states, I'll just read a little bit. It says, birth control, it was sold as the great sexual liberator. The propaganda read, you can now have as much sex as you want without getting pregnant. This was used to disguise the real purpose of reducing the Black and non-white birth rate. The white supremacists implemented containment programs all over the world by linking trade, investment, military arms, material aid, and financial support to rates of birth control. Skipping down a little bit, foreign monetary policies were tied to birth control activity. So I think I was definitely too young when birth control came out or when it was talked about. I think it was just like maybe somewhere around high school, or even being a non-white male, you're not really even introduced to that unless you're talking to a non-white female. Usually non-white females are the only ones who know anything about birth control. But when he says that it was used as a way to control birth rates, basically control birth rates among non-white people, I thought that the way that he the evidence saying that that monetary programs were connected to birth rates, that was something that I didn't even know or I was aware of. So basically for me, I interpret that as, if these non-white countries are if their birth rates are within a certain category, if they exceed a certain limit or something like that, they're basically going to cut the white supremacists are going to cut them from having aid and whatnot, or having resources, right? And that's just one of the many ways that they control the birth rates of non-white people all over the planet.
It's true. When I did read the text about birth control, it used to be studied specifically for non-white females. It's more pushed on non-white females, and as of today, it's more pushed on younger non-white females. So like right when you're in high school, they give you the whole birth control thing or the methods in basically middle school or starting 5th grade. So knowing that the long-term effects of birth control is harming the body and the cervix and the ovaries. Sometimes women feel like, they can't, they don't have a choice to protect themselves in other ways, but it's harmful to the body for sure, 100%, regardless of all the side effects. This is why Planned Parenthood is living well and alive. A white female made Planned Parenthood to decrease the birth rate of non-whites and Blacks, as for sure, as well as, that's why the number one killer of Black people is abortion, because the point is that a lot of Black males and females, if the white man and woman give them a scapegoat of having contraceptions or other ways out without taking the responsibility of these new coming generation, then that's the way it is. It's like stopping a whole new generation from coming, because we don't have the resources for anything. So we kind of lack on the resources they give us. And this is the resources that they give us. It's the same probably reason that China has like a limit of how many children they can have, 3 or less,
Yeah, I wanted to add, because Crws brought up a good point. I know when I was like middle school, high school, a lot of times when non-white females were talking about birth control, the reason was being to regulate their periods. And at that time, logic tells me you take birth control so you don't have children, but it's like almost encouraging sexual activity, giving it to them so young, and telling them, oh, it's to regulate your period, but it's also going to prevent a child. So, but they don't say that. I hope I'm making,
I totally agree, and I had that. That's one of my first thoughts when I was reading that. And another thing about the birth control is how it exists for non-white, primarily Black females, to make sure that there's not, a massive amount of Black people being reproduced on planet Earth. And then you'll have, laws that appear to be taking the rights away from women, but they're mainly trying to stop white females from getting birth control and stopping them from basically having abortions. And to the point where there's new bills where they're offering 10K bounties on people who report women who attempt to get, when I say women, I mean white females who get to try to get abortion. So the birth controls for non-white people and all these laws that are supposed to be taking rights away from women are just to, ensure that white genetics are able to remain on planet Earth and that white people survive on planet Earth. It's not really to actually promote positive health and sexual relations. And I totally agree with Kwaku that it encourages the young girls to engage in sexual activity, which leads to more, child parents, who raise kids who are just gonna grow up to be really non-constructive beings, just due to the circumstances of racism, white supremacy.
And just they need new oppressors. So of course, having them young is the easy route for them. Is they don't want us to have it at all.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like I remember going into middle school or high school, and we had the sex education class, and that's almost what they're selling. They're mentioning how birth control can not just regulate, but like lessen cramps or anything that has to do with your menstrual cycle. It just lessens these side effects that you have. But then it's almost like interesting because although it's lessening the side effects of natural menstrual cycles, it's almost giving you other side effects. Like, oh, you might be depressed if you take this medication, or you might be fatigued, or headaches, or bloating, and all of these things that comes with just taking birth control in general. It's almost like we're sold something like, hey, this can help you with your natural stuff, but we're going to give you all of these other things. And it sounds good because you're like, oh man, I can't take these cramps because society is not set up for me to have cramps. It's not set up for me to have children because I have to go to work every day and all of these things. So I think it's a lot of things, especially when on the subject of birth control. It's a lot of things that play into why people take birth control, especially environmental aspects of it and how we live in society where since it's already destined for us to not have kids or to not like produce, it's the society or environment is created in that way. So even if you have a kid, you're quote unquote struggling, or you can't take care of your kid in a certain way because the system. So it's like a weird like position to be in. Especially, it just obviously creates more confusion. Anything on the topic of sex, or especially birth control, dealing with like preventing sex, it just provides more confusion. So having more sex is just confusion in general.
Yeah, I agree. Really, again, logical points being made all around. I think birth control has been a really genius tactic of racism in plain sight, because just the clear evidence of white people going into these non-white areas and telling people, hey, if you don't control your birth population, if you don't control the birth rate, we won't give you the resources you need to survive. So for people to see that and not to understand that, hey, this is like mistreatment on the basis of color to a high degree, is just shows you how confused we are on about pretty much everything that happens in the system. Because I was again once thought that birth control was a constructive thing, but like everything in the system, it serves to strengthen the system of white supremacy and weaken victims of the system. So of course, birth control is mostly targeted towards people who are not white, um, and it's just uh, a tragic travesty that this has been going on for so long, and not many of us have been able to call it what it is and do what needs to be done, because it's tragic that one of the tactics used to kill Black people is abortion to the amount that it is, at the rate that it happens. But this is to be expected in a system where just Black life is just not valued at all.
Facts. Black people have more abortions than they do have live births. So anybody trying to say Black people don't have access to abortions or whatever is lying straight out of their
That's
teeth.
lying. And you can get it for free, and you don't need medical, none of it. And it's kind of like, do damn if you do, damn if you don't, because yeah, you have an abortion, you can't take care of the baby, you won't have resources. But then if there's a possibility if you go to the hospital, you might not make it. You know, there's Black women, Black females are more prone to death during birth than any other female. So it's like lose-lose situation.
I don't want to come off as a conspiracy theorist, but since we're talking about abortion and we are in the system of white supremacy down here in Dallas, Texas, the food warehouse, which distributes food to the majority of Dallas students, which are majority non-white students, is on a street called Sanger. And if you're not familiar with Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, then that's something that you should get familiar with. That's all I have to add.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Very, very telling. Any more comments from the text folks would like to share?
I wanted to talk about inclusion. I'm not going to go through all these in order, but I felt like inclusion was a pretty good, not good, but a pretty relevant one, especially with the diversity and inclusion initiatives that are going on. So basically, for me, I understand inclusion as what the author says towards the end. I thought that summed it up. He said the very last sentence. He said, "It is a slickly designed divide and conquer strategy," and I think that this is something that white supremacists have done forever, even when they were taking slaves. When they were taking Black people from Africa and turning them into slaves. They one thing that did was it took the greatest minds from the continent and from the people and had it working for white people. So that is kind of the same thing that is going on here with these diversity and inclusion initiatives. Is they are trying to take the cream of the crop Black people, the ones who maybe haven't been as victimized or by the system in a certain way, but it's taking those Black people and taking them straight to white people to go work for white people to continue the system of racism, white supremacy, when those black minds can be helping end racism, white supremacy. So I thought that was a very inclusion is definitely a word that needs to be like analyzed, and a word that definitely everybody needs to pay close attention to. Nobody else. I wanted to read this line. He said, "The term inclusion also implies a subservient relationship. That means I'll take care of you Black people, so don't worry about a thing. This code word has nurtured the rise of the so-called Black nerd, a racial creation of white supremacy and part of a process that selects and recruits some of the most talented Black minds." So yeah, basically, basically repeating what I said, uh, taking the best black minds. I don't know well, maybe he could clarify what a black nerd is, but I interpret that as somebody who maybe focuses or on something. I don't know what a black nerd could be, but yeah, I'm gonna stop talking. That's all I got on that.
Thank you, Quaku. Brilliant, insight. This code word inclusion has been very destructive and causing confusion amongst non-white people. I know it, the area education universities and college, they love using this term, inclusion. It's right up there with diversity. And I'm just going to read from a little bit from the definition as well. I mean, from the decoding of the word as well, from 51, where he says the term inclusion fosters competition between Asians, Latinos, and Black people. In other words, like different racial classifications made by white people. And I'm going to continue. This is done with the purpose of minimizing non-white participation while pretending to embrace it. And it says, inclusion is a dynamic action word designed to create and foster the notion of effective participation. And I'm going to skip here. He talks about how people who are conditioned to believe in this concept of inclusion are just, and on lack of a better phrases, divided and conquered, because it creates this reality. I hope Quickie didn't read this already. I don't think he read. I think he read the part after this, but it says on 52, they do not wish to be called or classified as Black. This is nothing new, but at this critical juncture in history, it could have major consequences that set the progress of Black people back many years. I don't know what he means by progress. I would say Black people haven't begun to make progress towards eliminating the system of white supremacy, because the majority of people classified as Black or non-white, we don't understand how the system of white supremacy, what it is and how it works. So definitely lots of work to be done. And I would agree that the Black nerd is just a victim of racism who has potential, like all victims of racism have potential to do valuable effort into eliminating the system. But when we are fed these many racial code words, and we believe that we could escape racism, or we could have a lot of comfort through diversity and inclusion, and no longer being at risk, it's where we fall into these the traps, and we are captured with these labels. But I may be in error. I may be rambling. Any more notes?
When I think of inclusion, I think of entertainers, actors, and such, and athletes as well. So, yeah. Oh, and rappers, singers, non-white. Yeah, that's what I think of when I think of inclusion. And we see them with money and, mansions and cars and this and that. And we think, hey, I could do that. I could. But, they're picked for that spot for us to envy and be jealous and want to be like, and it's incorrect. That whole system, this whole system is incorrect. I mute my line.
What you said reminds me of how another way this inclusion dynamic tactic has been used to just further confuse and mistreat non-white people. Because I've noticed that with this term inclusion being used in area 2, that means having to see non-white people engage in anti-sexual behaviors on the TV screen. Like, this word inclusion has been used to allow a lot of acute insanity around Black people, around non-white people. So I hope folks understand what I'm saying. If not, then study code.
This reminds me of a Black person who I know personally, who was a member of a so-called Black Greek organization, whatever that means. And they graduated from a prestigious white institution and is now the Dean of Inclusion Excellence. Not sure if that's relevant to what's being said.
I wanted to add to what Ray said, because that's something that I see very, like, so often. I feel that because they have these offices of diversity and inclusion, oftentimes they're called like Office of DEI, but it'll always be a non-white person. More often than not, it's going to be a black female that is the dean or the director of these offices. And for me, when I think of inclusion, it's the one black male, because I think it's more rare to see a black male in these white organizations than it is a black female nowadays. That's just my opinion. The one black male who in the room entirely of white people, or the one black male who is going to be put. There's only one black male that works there, but they're going to be on the face of diversity for that white organization.
Yeah, usually how it goes in the system. Definitely that. Well, Ray says just I would say an example of white supremacists creating a position to give to a non-white person to racially showcase, and to, of course, not that position doesn't serve to eliminate the system of white supremacy. It just probably just seems to yeah, it doesn't serve to eliminate the system. So that's all that needs to be said about that position. Very, very telling, very, very expected. And I'm just gonna read from page 53. Wait, oh no. This is from this is from a different definition. Anywho, do we have any more notes folks would like to share, begin to share? As we continue.
Yeah, actually, for inclusion, when I was thinking about it, just my last thing for that, it just provides more confusion, and they're having a blast with that position, or even just saying inclusion in general. Especially, they always have that one black person, as we've mentioned before, getting into an inclusion position. But what are they doing in the position? Nothing, absolutely nothing, but creating some workshops or something about how we can do inclusion. How can these black people assimilate to be white? How can we assimilate them? But we don't want them. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, and what you said reminds me, brings to mind, what have you been, first of all, who's excluded, and who's excluded from what, and what are these people supposed to be being included in? These things seem to never be discussed for a lot of the times, unless we're talking about including some anti-sexual stuff on the agenda. That seems to always be a topic. Always include more of that. But as for including non-white people and receiving housing, receiving non-poisonous foods, or just receiving food, period, receiving constructive help, including non-white people and these sorts of things seems to be out of question. So this inclusion thing definitely has been a wonderful tactic used by white people.
I feel like the word inclusion makes you, like, the black person, you have to be grateful because I'm letting you do this and I'm letting you do that. Same with diversity, and I was talking to Ray, the other Ray, about affirmative action. It's I'm letting you do these things in this system of white supremacy, so you should be happy and be a happy black person. That's what I'm hearing with inclusion.
Oh, exactly right. What you said is very reminiscent of what the artist says here on page 52. He says, when referring to the word inclusion. It is, however, an illusionary word that frustrates non-whites and pits them against each other for the leftover crumbs. So yeah, very much logical what you said. Any so the next term is undesirables. And so this is just he gives a lot of information on this word, and this word and just its entire book, highly recommended. We probably won't be able to cover all of these words, but definitely order a copy of this book to become less confused about the system of white supremacy, what it is and how it works, so we can solve this problem. But the word undesirables, I'm just gonna read, I'm just gonna jump around. He says, this is from page 53. He says, white males have gone to Florida to engage in open, lewd, and immoral sexual behavior for years. And the media have proclaimed this act as simply the boys need to work off some steam and have a little fun in the sun. At these events, white males regularly gorge themselves on wet t-shirt contests and groping white females. The media sees white females without any prodding or coercion fully expose their bodies and have sex in public. This sexual activity regularly happens at Mardi Gras, the Florida Fantasy Festival, and Hasabu River, which is south of the Mexican border, and the Colorado River. However, cries of undesirable vicious savages and vicious rapists are not heard. Such cries are only heard when Black males very foolishly try to duplicate the worst behavior of white people by engaging in the same kind of immoral and mindless behavior. So this is referring to, he like compares white behavior to the Puerto Rican festival in the year 2000, where allegedly Black males were groping light-skinned females and white females, and a bunch of news people reported on the situation, referring to the males, the Black males, as rapists and lusting after females, which is where like this term undesirable comes from. It comes from like the fear of Black males having access to white female, because when Black males have access to white females, we are able to produce more non-white people, and that's more people that white people have to maintain, subjugate, and control. And sometimes they don't want all that. Sometimes they don't, which is why back in the day, Black males were often terrorized, brutalized for even thinking about touching a white female. But in the refined system of white supremacy, it's very much okay for a white woman to rape a Black male and call it sex, because that's how the system has been refined. And this part also reminds me of Girls Gone Wild, like that sort of white behavior. It has not only has been like celebrated in like TV, Hollywood, and all sorts of TV shows, but it has also been commercialized to the point where it wasn't hard for children, anyone, to catch a Girls Gone Wild commercial on TV. So I really appreciate the authors in saying that Black males foolishly try to imitate white behavior, which is what we have been trained to do. We try to do everything white people do, which is part of the reason we haven't been able to become serious about solving this problem. Because if we're acting like the person who considers us their enemy, we're not gonna get anywhere in solving the problem, I suspect. But I'll meet my line and see if folks have things to share.
It's interesting, and I appreciate Mr. Anaharo adding that to the text as well. I just wanted to point out on June 19th, that's also the same day as Juneteenth, celebrated, which shouldn't be celebrated down here in Texas. So, Black people free, and we celebrate by these insane behaviors. I'll mute my line.
I thought that this section was very well written. Likewise, the author's contributions definitely cleared up some confusion. For me, this section showed kind of the refinement of racism, white supremacy. We'll go from black males. We're gonna kill them for touching at these white women to now you're allowed to touch these white women, but it's in the act of doing so, we're going to paint you as beasts, as animals that cannot contain their sexual urges for these white females. And I thought on the top of 54, the top of the second paragraph, where he said the racist wanted to erase the impression that just one look at a white female meant certain pain and death for black men. The old model of racism was out the door. The new model was the name of the game. So I thought that was very interesting, and it's like this word undesirable. It'll continue to follow black males, black people in general, as long as the system of racism, white supremacy exists. So just because white people are maybe a little bit more tolerant of black people in certain situations does not mean that they desire them. For it's quite simply, you will forever be a Negro. You will forever be a nigger in the eyes of white people.
Yeah, correct. As long as the system exists, non-white people, whether Asian, Mexican, yellow, brown, whatever you want to, whatever classification or we want to associate ourselves, as long as we are considered non-white, that nigger label is definitely going to follow all of us until the system has been replaced with a system of justice.
I also wanted to add that I think that it's very interesting. It's also important how he says that when white males are doing this kind of behavior, nothing's wrong with it. It's sanctioned. It's okay. But as soon as black males start participating in the behavior, then it's these heinous animals can't control themselves around white women. And this is something that's frequently done under the system of racism.
Every year we have something here on this side of the planet called the West Indian Day Parade. And white cops, white law enforcement, they would dance with the non-white females in a very provocative manner. And they didn't have it this year because of COVID, but years prior they had it. And within the last 5 years, they would show every once in a while, they would show the white law enforcement dancing with the females. But I remember years ago, I'm talking about 1999, this was happening, and you didn't see it on the news or anything like that. And I used to think like, wow, like they just killed I think his name was Mamadou Diablo. I even pronounced his name wrong, but they killed him. They shot him about white cops. They shot him about 40 plus times. And I'm like, and now they're dancing. I'm like, these are the same people, same white people that would shoot your child, and we're dancing with them. It was really like sad. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out, how white cops supposed to be doing their job, supposed to be they're supposed to be protecting us, and they're not doing that. But yet they're dancing with us in a very tacky, trashy manner, and the system continues, it goes on.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the tactics. White people use like century-old tactics because non-white people still don't get it. Barbara Sizemore. So yeah, that is unfortunately a tactic that still is where like a race soldier, patrolling through the neighborhood, picking out some non-white children, giving them some toys or dancing with them or dancing with a group of victims. That produces a lot of comfort, a lot of feel good feelings for victims who are seeking that rather than absolute correction to the damage done to Black people worldwide. But yeah, that tactic of dancing with non-white people or getting non-white people to dance instead of think, definitely a age-old tactic in the system of white supremacy. And I'm pretty sure that falls under inclusion too. I'm sure, let's include Black people and race soldiers dancing, but not eliminating racism and white supremacy.
It causes confusion, mass confusion.
Agreed. So the next word that was on the list is smut, and this whole word, race code word, is for me it was a Welsing moment because you just understand you get like from a whole different author, you can get an indication that whoever like started, whoever created this word or began to use the word in this manner clearly doesn't associate sex with anything positive or constructive or not even natural, because the definition just views the act of sex in a negative manner, which is very telling of how white people just their whole psychology behind that genetic annihilation and how the sex and the shame that they experience and that they have regarding their skin and the things that they produce with their sex, which is other people who have a lot of anxieties and feelings about their skin. So I hope that made sense, but this was just a Welsing moment. If you read that text, maybe you may understand what I'm saying. Hopefully understand what I'm saying. But 54, the word smut. The word is used to identify pornographic material and sexually explicit acts. Smut is darkened ash from old furnaces. It is very Black in color. Therefore, the use of the term implies that sex is dirty and Black or nasty. That it is trashy and low life. When pornography became a huge business in the late 1960s, there were very few Black people doing film sex acts. It should have been called Snow because of the large number of white people in pornography films and videos. It would have been more correct. The labeling and equating of explicit sex with Blackness is a pure act of racism and implies that all sexual activity is dark and Black. The word smut has begun to make a comeback in the year 2002 in a new language of the porn industry. So yeah, this is like magnificently said by the author. And yeah, Welsing moments throughout. Comments, notes to share?
Just commenting on that, I think I found it very interesting that that word was associated with almost a completely white industry, and it was used so negatively. I wasn't aware of that, but I think it kind of goes to show the how white people use words and relate them back to racism and to Black people. That's all. That's my comment on that. I did want to talk about the underclass. The underclass, I think that's a word that I think maybe I haven't heard it too much lately, but I have heard it before. I think now the like new word for that is like low income. But I thought it was very interesting how he basically said, like, when we understand like class, like societal classes, I believe and this is part of the code because I believe that part of the code, but I believe that there's only the powerful class and the powerless class. Black people are in the powerless class. Black people don't have any power. But I thought I didn't highlight the part, but where he was basically saying that black people can't even be considered a class because they depend entirely on white people. So to even call them underclass, it's really just stating that they are subservient, they're low level, and they're slave-like in nature, in their existence. I hope that made sense. That's all I have on that.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate his understanding of the role Black people play in the system of white supremacy. He says this is from page 56, they cannot be classified as anything other than a non-class group, a social commodity to be bought and sold by the different classes of people. They are merely a surplus population. The notion of class when applied to Black people is clearly a misnomer. Black people are really the dependent wards of white people. But yeah, white people, I mean, non-white people, especially Black people, like are not members of like the middle class, the upper middle class, or any sort of class. We are just powerless prisoners of war. And it's when you associate yourself with like being like low class or middle class, you begin to think that capitalism or like your finances is the root of your problem, but not the global system of white supremacy, which is why this code word is so important to understand and not be fooled by.
I want to read the next line. The word underclass is used all over the globe to define Black youth and Black poor who live in so-called inner city. The word under means to be on the lower level, on the bottom. So if there's a underclass, if there's an upper class, that means there's a lower class, right? If there's a up, there's a down. And yeah, underclass. Yeah, so we need to think about these words that we use because sometimes people use these words like upper class, middle class, rich. So if there's a up, there's a below. I don't know. I have to think about it more, but yeah.
That reminds me, when I was in middle school, I had a white principal, and she specifically referred to the students, which consisted mostly of Black people, as underclassmen. So that brought back some tragic memories.
Yeah, that's also an area that this is used in, area education. Page 55, the race code word teeming slum, and it states here, the word slum is a code word to describe an area of town that is overcrowded with Black and other dark-skinned non-white people. The word slum has become synonymous with the concept of being Black. A slum area is an inferior, backward, and disease-filled area. It is an area where modern-day savages reside. And this code word here, slum, it just takes me back to my old patterns of thinking, because I used to definitely associate myself with being some sort of being from the slums, because I just knew the area I grew up in was very slummy, dirty, it's for Black people. But reading this, being less confused, reminded me of the movie Slum Dog Millionaire, which takes place in the area of the world known as India, where the main character is a person classified as Indian who has dark skin, could be anyways, his name is Jamal. You know, if that means anything, his name is Jamal, and the whole story is about how he's experienced various forms of mistreatment due to him being an Indian male in a really slummy environment, and he eventually becomes a slum dog millionaire because his travesties teach him various lessons that he's allowed to that he uses to win Who Wants to Be a Millionaire TV show. Anyways, great telling, and that movie was made by a white person, Danny Boyle. So it's just a reminder to me that white people are definitely not confused about white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. Very, very like seeing this word in here because this word highly dangerous, and it's not hard to just type slums news, and you're sure to find a bunch of news articles or news videos where may not be using calling the areas direct slums, but you will find reportings on so-called countries with dark-skinned people there, and that's where mostly the slums are going to be located. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the term slum lord?
Oh, yeah. It reminds me. Yeah, it reminds me of another film where non-white people are just being mistreated. Kung Fu Hustle. You know, that whole group of non-white people is being mistreated by the slumlord who beats them up. So yeah, I definitely have heard that term. Very just another word for nigger. If the slumlord is a non-white person, it's just more of like a what we would be like a house negro or something like that, I suppose.
That Slumdog Millionaire, that is so racist. I don't know how I just realized that.
Yeah. His main, and it's funny because the love interest, so-called love interest in that film, which like they both begin the film when they're very young, they're very dark-skinned children, but for some reason the lights when she's an older female, it seems like she's much lighter, like she has lightened up, which is a very common practice over there in the area of the world known as India. So who knows? Yeah, if that's just a little subtle hint.
Whenever I hear the word slum, I immediately think of Brazil because I think that's where the term is most often used, at least from what I've seen. I remember in particular when they had the World Cup there a couple years ago, they would even announce on the news how they had to clear up slums for these stadiums, and all kinds of people were dying and whatnot. But they use that word slum a lot, and it also makes me think of that movie City of God. And when they say like these savages that live there, it's interesting how the darkest character in that movie was like the most crazed, the most violent, and he felt like he would often talk about how he controlled the slums. So that's kind of what I thought when I heard that, whenever I hear the word slum.
Yeah, and yeah, Lil Zeke, he was also the most. He was a black male. He also had the darkest skin complexion of them as well, and just a little more racism in plain sight. You know, the other black male is only able to avoid the gang lifestyle because he gets his hands on a piece of Urugu technology, being the camera. So yeah, racism in plain sight all over the place. I remember that going on as well in Rio, I believe it was, them having to clear up the slums, how it was like a huge effort, and now people are living in the places where the Olympics took place. Very tacky, very trashy. And hearing the word slums, I'm reminded that white people allow giant landfills to exist right next to areas of the world where Black people, non-white people live. And they call these things landfills, which not really filling land. They kind of take place on the ocean, but that's white supremacy for you, the hypocrisy in the words that don't make sense. And it's not correct.
And talking about Slumdog Millionaires, the kids who play the younger version of themselves, they're still living in slums today. They barely made any money. And oh yeah, that was a really good film. Slumdogs Millionaires and City of Gods.
I was gonna say, when I hear the word slums, like my face like does this turn up, like my nose turns up, like a grotesque word. And I also think about the people in India, and I also think about the women there that are poor, there's like acid attacks. They've been known for acid attacks, but acid attacks have increased with the poor women there that live in the slums, what they call the slums. But it is very much so just like that. They live right next to just landfills, and it's just trash there. So it is very, very, very interesting, that word.
Very well said. Thanks everyone for the sharing, participation. The next word, I'm just gonna a word here that I will be words that folks, you need to buy the book to get further insight on, that I won't be covering, is divide, digital ratio, and guess who's coming to dinner. Please buy the book, support Kyron and Harold. Race code war. Another text definition, race code word is that I'm skipping, is the old, central, or close-in suburbs, and also civil rights. But
05. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to mention the old, central, and close-in suburbs.
Oh, please do.
Because earlier in the book he mentioned suburbs, but that one, I think when I think of a suburb, I think of this suburb, like the old, central, or close-in suburbs, because those are the kind of the suburbs I'm familiar with. The suburbs that aren't really even located in any kind of major city or area. They're kind of far away from these metropolitan areas. They're very spread out, and a lot of white people live there. So when he's talking about the old, central, or closed-in suburbs, that was the suburb that made sense to me. That's the idea that the Black people are moving into the suburbs, and now the white people are moving back into the cities, right? After the cities have been gentrified. So now the Black people are now the suburbs that the white people are fleeing are now turning into the new ghettos, whereas now the white people are moving back to the inner cities where all the resources are and all the jobs are, while Black people are moving out. So that's all I wanted to say on that part.
Yeah, thank you for that really great analysis. And
I was just looking up really quick the etymology of the word suburb, and one of its original definitions mean outside of municipal jurisdiction. Not sure if that means anything in the system of white supremacy.
I would say just out of the proximity of non-white people, So this term trash talking just has a lot of information. So I'm gonna cover it in chunks. So the first bit I'm gonna read from and discuss is page 57. And referring to trash talking, it was praised as a psychological tool to disrupt the concentration and thinking ability of their opponent. When black males engaged in chatter and it took it to a higher and more intense level, it was reclassified as trash talk with zero content, functioning at the garbage level. The correlation between trash and black people is indeed a interesting and revealing affiliation. Until recently, the majority of the nation's trash containers were dark or black in color. So just to give a little more insight to the folks who don't access to the text, we're talking about entertainment area of sports. Once upon a time when white athletes engaged in trash talk, it was called chatter, and news like sportscasters would say that it was a way for athletes to get into each other's heads by causing by using chatter. But when non-white people started doing it, particularly black males started doing it, it became trash talk, and trash talk with zero content. Just black males being silly and aggressive black males is what it has become now. But when white people were doing it, it was called chatter, and it had like a they were doing it because they're smart athletes and they know how to get into each other's heads. So I hope you understand um the the differences and the associations of the word. And then he makes the correlation between black people and trash cans, which is very telling. And I fell victim to calling other black people trash for fun without just about knowing how destructive and stupid it was. So he says here, I'm going to continue on page 57. It is still true that the vast majority of trash containers in the backyard and office are still darker black. Many of these containers are shaped like darker black penises. What is the association between the black reproductive organ and trash? The relationship is that the product that emanates from the black reproductive organ is trash, garbage, and therefore no good. That means black people are born as garbage and are throwaway surplus. That reminds me of how Neely Fuller Jr. calls the system of white supremacy so destructive and evil because it just produces throwaway people. White people have said, "Hey, these people they don't mean much. Their existence is expendable, so they become throwaway people who starve to death, are killed in police executions, killed via poor diet, diseases produced by white people destroying the environment, just millions of ways we are eliminated." And it's because we have been classified as a throwaway surplus, which should be enough motivation for victims to get serious about solving this problem ASAP. Those are my notes on trash talking. It's still a lot to be discussed here. Maybe other folks would like to chime in on the rest of the notes or the rest of the definition, but I'll mute my line.
I thought it was interesting. I didn't know. I thought that there only was trash talking. I didn't know about what he mentioned as chatter. I never heard that term before, but I think trash talking has definitely damaged the concept of trash talking has definitely damaged the reputation and the image of black people, especially black males. Growing up, I I hung out with like a lot of non-black people, and even to this day, I know somebody who we would play basketball a lot, but I know somebody who kind of he would never admit it, but for some reason he never wanted to play with other people. He only kind of wanted to play with the people that he knew. But I suspect that he was very afraid of black people, so he didn't want to, play basketball or play sports with them because oftentimes it's perceived as black people become very emotional, very intense when they're playing sports, and uh, oftentimes it's almost like expected that like violence will break out, over such things as like basketball. And I think that's kind of like what this perception of trash talking does. Is he even says in the book like it's intense, right? So when black people are doing it, it's this overly emotional, this highly charged way of speaking to each other that's called trash talking. But when white people are doing it, it's called chatter. So people are probably more comfortable playing sports with white people because that's not associated with them, that intensity and that fear of violence breaking out, but it's associated with black people because of terms like trash talking.
Yeah. And on top of that, non-white black males, black females have also just been associated with this so-called like impeccable athletic prowess and the ability that could also be where that intimidation was coming from. A combination of the trash talking stereotype and a combination of oh, these black people are way stronger and faster and more athletic than me, so I don't even want to risk the humiliation of being defeated by them, or I'm no match for such athletic beast, which could have been in that person's brain computer as well. Any more comments?
When reading the term trash talking, I've thought of two things. One, trying to notice how close when you like read a news article in a newspaper, and when they mention a non-white person and the term trash, like how it'll be sometimes the next sentence over or the sentence before. And another thing, playing the Dirty Dozens or the Dozens, where you talk trash to another non-white person, and how there's a very popular TV show where the whole show is just based on this. I'm not going to name the show, but it's extremely popular because of white people, even though they have a non-white male as the front, of the show. It's white people who allowed this program to be on and gave it permission to be on and gave it leadway. Yeah, that's it.
This is a great and tragic segue that I'm going to be I wish I could. I'm gonna maybe send his link to maybe Ray 1/0. Maybe he can share it for us, because I have a tragic example of just how trash talking has just took its way out of sports, of course, a long time ago, and it has become its own unique form of entertainment amongst non-white people, and we are very, very serious about it. But when we really analyze it and maybe look at it from a counter-racist standpoint, we can see the just complete incorrectness of it and insanity of it. So let me see that.
I was gonna say, it's like you're praised to be able to really like talk trash, or like if you have the slickest mouth, like that's a skill, like people in the Black community get praised for having like the slickest mouth and who can talk the best trash, like that's how far it's gotten.
Yeah, exactly.
Remind me of an incident that my friend had with her son at a park. Some white boy and his friends came to play because she lives in a valley, and her son wanted to play, and the white boy was really trash talking her son, even though he's like a little older than him. He was trash talking him about how he can't play, how he can't do a 3-pointer. This is our court. Like really just pushing him to the side. And for her to try to stand up for her son, and he was still like down talking her as she's supposed to be, quote unquote, the adult of the situation. Nobody went to try and stop the situation. If any guy, the Asian male, agree with the young white male about the situation. So she just kind of left it alone. But she was like, try to see like if she could talk to the mother. But I was like, well, where do you think he learned that from? Where do you think where he comes in this basketball court and he feels like he's owned this title of trash talking, not specifically, but just to your non-white son? Where do you think he gets that from? So I feel like you talking to the mother is not going to do anything because it starts somewhere.
Yeah, reminded of Wild and Out, the verses. Yeah, it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Trash talking, name calling, mistreating non-white people for fun. I put a link in the chat. Ray, if you're able to share that, that would be splendid.
And guess who's the best one on the so-called best one on Wild and Out? I wasn't gonna put it out there. Guess who's the best one on there?
Probably a white female.
White female with red hair. That's right. She's supposedly the best. She's been there a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure she's one of the reasons why the show is so popular as well.
Also, too, like decoding wild and out, wild and out.
yeah, it's very just in your face. They got a bunch of non-white people, mostly non-white people, literally acting a fool, wild and out. A bunch of monkeys on the stage. White people exactly know what they're doing with this show, and it's presented in that manner.
I believe Mr. Fuller calls it the sport enjoyed by all. Is the screen share available? Can anyone see this?
Yeah, I could see it.
All right, one moment.
Is it playing for anybody else?
No, I can't. No. I don't suspect it's gonna work for me, but I've already seen the clip, so it's just for y'all to see it.
You all could hear this, correct?
No, I didn't. I
No.
didn't hear anything or see anything.
Well, maybe let me try again and unmute my line.
Okay.
No, when you go to share screen, there should be an option that says to share sound. Right next to the share button on the left.
You might have to stop sharing and then share again.
Okay. All right, one moment. Yeah, I don't see anything that says share sound.
All right, no worries. I'll play the clip some other time. We don't need to waste too much time on this.
Okay, I'll put the photo back up.
So the next word is a word that I wish non-white people would just understand and stop using start using correctly, because the way that this word is used is ridiculous. And the word is minority. It's on page 58. It's a code word. This code word is designed to make whites appear appear more dominant than non-whites. This is done to make Black people feel inferior to whites and give the appearance that whites present the majority of the world's population. The reality is that whites are less than 20% of the world's population. The term minority also means that Blacks are less in number and are inferior. So everyone should know that white people are a global minority, but they control the entire planet. You know, non-white people should hear this and be like, whoa, hold on, you telling me this tiny minority of people controls the whole planet and they're running it this way? Yes, they are running it this way. That should be a lot of motivation to want to put an end to how white people are running the planet, because it's a very small number of them, but they have become very effective and very dangerous at dominating this entire planet. So the only way to stop them is going to be very serious and have some sort of code of countering them. So minorities, non-white people are not a minority. Non-white people who are attempting to solve the problem and understand it, yes, very, very small minority. But as a collective of non-white people, definitely Black people, non-white people are the global majority. We just have been confused and made to believe that we are this minority. Any more comments regarding what was said or notes to share?
The
Just
reason
that-
why they get, go ahead, Ray.
No, ma'am, I'm listening intently.
Another reason why they fool us. Thank you, Ray. Another reason why they fool us with this term minority, because they keep saying that Black people are 13% plus. When you look on TV, everything is white. White TV shows, movies and programs. So you think that the population is bigger because that's all you see on TV, and they keep telling us that we're only 13%, but they're not including everybody else, other non-white people. We need to include non-white people. Stop the division. Stop the, oh, you're Jamaican, oh, you're this, you're that. No. We're just non-white. That's it. I mean, when you look at people in Rio de Janeiro and Cuba and Pacific Islanders, they look like us. They look like us. That's it.
I agree. As a suggestion, whenever that term is used, just ask, what do you mean when you say minority? And whenever I talk to non-white people, I just give them the analogy. White people account for 1/10 of the world's population. So basically, if there are 10 people inside of one room, planet Earth, white people account for one person. So when you look at it, that one person is telling the other 9 people what to do. So if we look at it like that, then we can see these people, white supremacists, for what they truly are. I mean,
Yeah, I love the way. Well, I probably love doesn't exist in a system of white supremacy. So I must say I appreciate the way you put that. That's a really simple way to understand the incorrect power relationship dynamic between white and non-white. 10 people in a room, and one person is controlling 9 of those people. Super huge balance. I mean, huge imbalance and power. So that's planet Earth worldwide. White people controlling 99% of us, 100% of the time. So words, another word that you have to purchase the book to further your understanding of it is impoverish, nightmare, high risk population. I will read I know reverse demonstration. I won't be covering that either. High risk population is very similar to at risk, but still a lot of information here that you have to buy. Race Cold War to get a greater understanding on. I will read Cannibal because I was just reminded of the true life cannibals we actually exist amongst, which are persons who classify themselves as white and who maintain the system of white supremacy. Those are the actual cannibals, not black people whatsoever. Anyways, I'm gonna read the word here on page 60. It says, "This is an old code word for black man in a jungle. When this word is used, it is always a subtle or overt reference to an uncivilized black population. There are many sources of this word association, from Tarzan, the Ape Man books and movies, to songs like In the Jungle, which symbolize conquering the savages of Africa and civilizing them enough to function as semi-human beings. During the 1930s, when white supremacists were more brazen in their racist portrayals of black people, it was common to find pictures of black people with bones coming out of their noses, ready to eat the poor. White settlers stewing in a boiling hot pot. This old notion of cannibalism is still in the minds of millions of whites, and for that matter, millions of blacks. The word cannibal is a direct reference to the word dark. During one nightly newscast, a famous CBS news anchor introduced a story about Africa using the term deepest Africa. This phrase is close enough to invoke the association of racist terms like darkest Africa or the dark continent. Another term here is jungle. Maybe other folks have notes on that, but I do not. But cannibals, the real cannibals are folks like Jeffrey Dahmer and his millions of supporters who currently exist on planet Earth. Books to read to understand the history of white people and their cannibalism. The Delectable Negro, Rethinking Rufus Medical Apartheid, and the book by Richard Suggs. It has a long title, but it involves corpse medicine. So ton of literature that folks can read if they actually want to learn about who are the true cannibals. But I do appreciate Neely Fuller's understanding of the system of white supremacy and how he says that the greatest expression of white supremacy in the form of a person is and Jeffrey Dahmer, who was a cannibal who ate black males, as well as raped, sodomized black males, and collected their body parts as souvenirs and as playthings and sexual play toys, which is just the history of white supremacy wrapped up into one person. All of that, collecting black male body parts, raping black males, all that stuff, the history of white supremacy. That's the true cannibalism, is that allowing the system of white supremacy to continue to exist. That's the real cannibalism. I'll be my line. See if folks have any other notes they want to share.
When it came to jungle, I remember in 2018, there was an image of a little dark-skinned black boy, and he had on a green t-shirt that said King of yes, there you go. Wow. And so many people were upset about it. And the mother was not. There were some people who were upset and some weren't. And yeah, that's it. That's the image. Oh, so tacky. But I'm gonna put that on that job.
I'm reminded about 4 years ago, I had to do a physical for my license, and white male, suspected white supremacist, was checking my ears, and I have locks. And he had to move my locks out of the way. And he makes the statement, "Oh, it's like a jungle in there."
Yep. And non-white people are most certainly non-white people, and their features, their presence most certainly associated with the jungle, which is very bizarre given that when white people first made contact with non-white people, we were not living in a jungle but living in like great civilizations, and we were welcoming in these white people who are coming into our civilization and taking the information that would then be used to destroy our civilizations in the near future. So really the system is built on just like a massive amount of hypocrisy and deception, deceit. It's just really incredible what persons who classify themselves as white have been able to pull off in this couple of thousand years since they've been running things. Any more comments, notes?
Kind of want to go back to page 55. Guess who's coming to dinner? Yeah, they made a movie out of this, 1960 something. Then they made another movie about it. I'm gonna say 2005 with Bernie Mac, and they just keep making these movies with the same. I mean, they'll change the words a little bit, but it's the same theme over and over again. Yeah, so we need to definitely pay attention to words, the words that we use, and ask questions. What do you mean? What are you talking about? And pay attention to, yeah, everything that we read, whether it be advertisement, newspapers, magazines, everything. Just pay attention. You think you know, but you really don't. You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed.
The Guess Who with Bernie Mac and Zoe Saldana, Ashton Kutcher. That remake was very tragic, and I remember a line when in that movie when Bernie Mac asked Ashton Kutcher, when did he and his daughter, Zoe Saldana played Bernie Mac's daughter in this movie. By the way, if anyone's never seen this, but Bernie Mac asked Ashton Kutcher when did he and his daughter first start dating, and Ashton Kutcher stated that she counts from the first time we went out on a date, but I count from the first time and then it got real silent, and they had this short but extreme stare down between one another. And that was an excellent example of Ashton Kutcher practicing on the movie, practicing white supremacy, because he had the gall to almost say this to this non-white female's black father. So there was absolutely no respect. And that goes back to, in the ISIS papers when Dr. Welsing was relaying how the majority of white men don't consider themselves men until they ravage a black female. I'll mute my line.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I remember that film, but I just thought it was, I never watched it. I just remember seeing the trailer and thought it was just, I didn't even know. I was so brain trash at the time that I didn't even understand that this was like a remake of like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner type situation. And yeah, really gross to say the least. I believe we can get into closing comments. I will begin. Excellent discussion. There's so many words that white people have organized themselves behind to wage this war of white supremacy against us. And it was definitely a tragic pleasure to be here with you all, understanding the damage that has been done, and hopefully correcting some of that damage. But I'll meet my line.
This discussion was definitely of constructive value. Learned a ton, and I want to continue to read this book throughout just to see what other words that are racially coded that I normally don't like, that I don't notice in my everyday life. But it's that conversation of really unpacking each of the words and really determining, like, what does this really mean, or what is this word code for another word. So great discussion. Thank you.
This discussion was great. Hearing everybody's point of view was good to hear. When I hear the saying, you know, words hold a lot of value, it means so much because there's so much decoding that is within these words that we're learning that we think is normal, but in reality, it's a whole code for us that is against us. So I'm just glad I'm knowing it now than not knowing it at all.
For me, my closing comments are constructive business meeting as usual. A lot of information was shared that I found constructive. By the book Race Code War by Mr. Kari Inaharo, and check out producejustice.com. That's it. See you all at the next business meeting.
Excellent business. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you guys for letting me join in. The discussion was great. I don't have the book, but the pages were shared with me, but I do plan on buying the book for sure. Thanks, guys.
Excellent business meeting. Please go buy the book, Race Code War. It's an excellent addition to the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. The compensatory code counter racist codified word guide is an excellent addition to that book. And thank you all.
This was a very constructive business meeting. I learned a lot from everyone sharing their own VGQ, personal perspectives. Please buy the book, Race Code War by Kari Inaharo, and please visit producejustice.com. Whoever is out there in the known universe, Black people need help on Earth. We are confused, but we know we need help.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Ray, for joining us. Your participation, I'm sure it was was our pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you again as we diminish our confusion as to what actually is happening on planet Earth, and what can we do as united individuals, united independently victims of racism. What can we do to solve this problem? I believe that was everyone. I think Sir has left us. Oh yeah, so yeah, thanks everyone who participated over on the stream. I have had many technical difficulties this week, but that is expected when you are a prisoner of war. So thanks to the chat, Mr. Still Learning. I know I saw you there. Sour Kiss and Edward Williams. What's the code? Rayel Roulette. Thank you, fellow victims, for participating in this learning session. I hope to see you next week. And again, producejustice.com to get on the United Independent Counter Racist Code, and Kyrie Anihara's book Race Code War can be found on Amazon. But check a Black bookstore first, of course. Well, that's that meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for their participation. Please like and share the video. Victims should have access to this information if they're seeking it, so please like and share.